Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer. We're going to definitively answer a question that's probably keeping a whole lot of car buyers up at night right now. Are petrol or electric cars actually cheaper to run in 2026? There's just so much noise and competing claims out there, so today we're stripping away the assumptions. We're going to crunch the real numbers, put them head to head, and see what the data actually reveals.
Now, for years, the number one objection to making the switch was range anxiety, right? That absolute fear of being stranded on the side of the road. But looking at the reality on the ground today, finding a quick enough charger in the UK and Western Europe is basically a solved problem, assuming you do just a little bit of planning. So with the charging networks expanding like wildfire, we really need to look at the new front line of the EV transition. And that, my friends, is the price.
Here is our fight card for today's showdown. We'll be looking at number 1, the next EV barrier. Number 2, financing smoke and mirrors. 3, the monthly fuel fight. 4, used cars and tax perks. And finally, number 5, the truth about plug-ins. Let's break it all down.
Section 1. The next EV barrier, establishing the contenders.
To make sense of what is honestly a really confusing market right now, we can't just deal in hypotheticals. We need a real-world, head-to-head showdown. And this matchup brilliantly illustrates our baseline for today. We're evaluating a financial heavyweight bout between the beloved traditional petrol VW Golf GTI and its modern electric equivalent, the VW ID.3 GTX. These two cars are aimed at the exact same driver, but as you'll see, the underlying economics of owning them are completely different.
Section 2. Financing smoke and mirrors, looking past the list price.
What's really fascinating here is how the car industry uses hidden levers, ensuring your monthly payment isn't actually tied directly to that intimidating sticker price. It turns out almost no private buyers pay cash up front for a new car anymore. Instead, they use a PCP, a personal contract purchase, or a leasing model. And this is absolutely crucial to understand because it gives manufacturers incredible power to just fiddle with the math behind the scenes. If they need to shift a bunch of EVs to meet government mandates, well, they pull a few levers to make that specific car suddenly look very affordable on paper.
So those sky-high list prices, they're often just an illusion. Dealers use what they coyly call deposit contributions to protect a car's residual value on the back end. They also heavily manipulate interest rates. Get this, Renault is currently charging 6.9% interest on an electric R4, but offering a totally zero interest deal on a petrol capture. Crazy, right? And brands are even just making up their own grants now, like the Suzuki Granted discount, which literally lops off £3,750, or MG knocking off £1,500. Add in bundled home charges and negligible differences in insurance, and the big takeaway is this: you've got to ignore the noise. Look strictly at the advertised monthly PCP rate.
So applying all these finance tricks to our two contenders. Let's say you put down a £7,000 initial payment on a typical 3-year deal, driving about 7,000 miles a year. The petrol Golf GTI is going to cost you just under £500 a month. Now, the electric ID.3 GTX, it actually sits at a slight deficit here, costing exactly £50 more every single month. So purely off the dealership lot, the petrol car is actually winning the fight.
Section 3. The monthly fuel fight, the core mathematical showdown.
Okay, yes, the EV costs 50 quid more a month to finance off the lot. But let's see what happens to the math when we actually start driving these things in the real world. Breaking down the stark reality of per-mile costs here, if you charge at home on a cheap overnight tariff, electricity is just a massive bargain. We're talking 8 pence per kilowatt-hour, which works out to an incredibly cheap 2.7 pence per mile. Meanwhile, the Golf GTI, battling today's completely spiked petrol prices, costs roughly 21 pence per mile. But notice that catch in the middle. If you rely solely on public chargers, your cost jumps all the way up to 17 pence per mile. That pretty much levels the playing field with petrol.
But let's look at the average driver who can charge at home. Your monthly fueling cost for the EV is a measly £16. The petrol GTI, a staggering £122 every single month. I mean, that is a total knockout punch. That massive gaping difference in energy perfectly erases our $50 finance deficit. When you combine the monthly car payment and the fuel cost, the EV suddenly takes the lead as the definitively cheaper vehicle to run.
Section 4. Used cars and tax perks, beyond the private dealership.
Let's step away from the shiny new car showroom for a moment because the second-hand market and the corporate world operate on entirely different rules. If you're buying used, you generally pay the actual list price, stripping away all those complex finance smoke and mirrors we just talked about. And right now, used EVs are incredible, frankly massive bargains.
You can find long-range BMW i4s outright cheaper than their 4-cylinder Petrol 430i counterparts. Audi Q4 e-trons cheaper than ICE EQ5s. You can even find a Renault Megane electric with under 30,000 miles on the clock for just £16,000. For that kind of money, you're getting a car that's vastly quicker and way better equipped than an equivalently priced petrol hatchback.
But wait, because the absolute biggest financial loophole of all exists in the corporate world. It revolves entirely around benefit in kind, or BIK tax. Now, this is a mandatory deduction from your income, based on the car you're given. And crucially, the government heavily ties its calculation to the car's official CO2 emissions.
Let's bring back our two contenders to see this in action. If you're a company car driver sitting in the 40% tax band and you decide, hey, I really want that petrol Golf GTI, well, you are going to get hit with an eye-watering BIK tax bill of nearly $6,000 a year. That is almost £500 coming right out of your pocket every single month, just in taxes.
But if you choose the electric ID3 GTX, literally everything changes. Because of its zero-emission status, that exact same monthly tax bill shrinks from £500 all the way down to just £77 a month. Seriously, £77. In the company car market, the EV doesn't just beat the petrol car, it absolutely annihilates it.
Section 5. The truth about plug-ins, a stepping stone or a trap. As a quick final coda to this battle, we really have to look at plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, or PHEVs. Does having both a petrol engine and an electric battery actually give you the best of both worlds? Well, they're often touted as this super safe stepping stone to full electric, but the data reveals some pretty massive hidden drawbacks. They are way less efficient than pure EVs when running on electric power, meaning public charging costs basically match petrol prices anyway. They're also painfully slow to charge away from home, maxing out around 50 kilowatts while pure EVs are hitting 200 plus. Add in the fact that they're super heavy, which totally compromises the driving dynamics, and the kicker. They cost nearly as much to finance as a fully electric vehicle. When you weigh all of those compromises against the finance costs, the source data brings us to this incredibly blunt conclusion regarding hybrids. They're not for private buyers then. Unless you are strictly buying one for a modest company car tax advantage and you're only doing local, home charge journeys, the math simply doesn't add up. It's a trap for a lot of regular buyers.
And that brings us to the end of our financial showdown. We've uncovered how dealer deposit contributions hide the true costs, how home charging completely erases those finance deficits, and how the used and corporate markets just heavily favor electric right now. So, I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder before you sign the paperwork on your next vehicle. If the math clearly proves that going fully electric is cheaper than both petrol and those hybrid stepping stones, are you holding on to petrol simply out of habit, or is it just because you haven't calculated the true cost of ownership yet? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you next time.